The dean was calling my name when a sound, like a door slamming shut on my entire life, echoed through the auditorium. My own sister stood, her chair scraping violently against the floor. She pointed a finger that felt like a blade aimed directly at my heart. Her voice didn't just cut through the ceremonial music, it slaughtered it. She doesn't deserve to walk this stage. She's a fraud. No whisper, no hesitation, just a clean public execution, broadcast to my professors, my friends, everyone I had ever known. The air itself vanished from the room. My parents became statues carved from shock and shame. My brother simply wasn't part of her vengeful story. The target was me, and me alone. I kept walking forward, holding 4 years of brutal work together with nothing but breath and spine. But to understand how my own sister became the architect of my public ruin, I need to rewind time. I need to take you back to where the cracks first formed, long before they became canyons. And first, I need to ask you, what would you have done, standing in my shoes, in that devastating moment when your world implodes? Part 1. The Shadow and the Sun, 500 words. I never saw my sister as a threat. For most of my life, I existed peacefully as her shadow. Maya wasn't just my older sister. She was the sun in our family's solar system, charismatic, effortlessly bold, the gravitational center of every holiday, every dinner, every conversation. Relatives didn't just listen to her stories, they leaned in, captivated. I was the quiet moon, learning to orbit at a safe distance, mastering the art of existing in the periphery so her light could shine without competition. I didn't resent it. That was just the natural order. She was the golden child, and I was the one holding her coat. But something subtle and seismic shifted when I began to develop my own gravitational pull. In high school, my grades, once merely good, began to consistently climb past hers. Teachers started calling on me first, their eyes lingering with a new kind of interest. Then, the college acceptance letters arrived. Mine came with a thick envelope, a full-ride scholarship to a university Maya had applied to and been rejected from. The congratulations she offered me that day in the kitchen carried the peculiar sweetness of fruit left out too long, cloying on the surface with the faint, fermented tang of resentment underneath. I told myself I was imagining it. I wanted to believe her hug was genuine. The physical distance became a chasm when I left for university. I packed a single duffel bag and a stack of psychology textbooks, my heart a mix of terror and exhilaration. Maya stayed in our hometown. Her own graduate program had ended abruptly, a subject we all tiptoed around. Different paths, I told myself. Different timing. What harm could there be in walking separate roads? Then the first pebble of sabotage tumbled down the mountain. A scholarship stipend arrived in my bank account noticeably short. A confusing, vaguely worded email from the financial aid office followed, citing an administrative adjustment. Then came a formal plagiarism warning for a midterm paper I had poured my very soul into, a paper I knew was original. Each incident was small, dressed in the bland language of bureaucracy, easy to dismiss as a clerical error, a system glitch, the chaotic noise of institutional life. But they accumulated. The weight of them, subtle at first, began to press. I started noticing the changed atmosphere around me. The sideways glances in the library stacks from classmates who would quickly look away. The conversations in the common room that would halt just a fraction too late as I walked in, leaving a pregnant silence in my wake. A quiet, insidious pressure began to build in my chest, a constant low-grade hum of anxiety. My best friend, Chloe, saw the change in me before I could name it myself. "You've been checking over your shoulder for weeks," she whispered one night in our shared dorm room, the blue light of our laptops painting her concerned face. "It's like you're waiting for something bad to happen." I wasn't waiting for bad news, I realized with a chill. I was waiting for a pattern to reveal itself. And the truth I was desperately avoiding was that the pattern, once seen, pointed in one terrifying direction: home. The final months before graduation felt like living in a house where someone was slowly, deliberately unscrewing all the light bulbs, not plunging me into total darkness, but casting everything in a deepening, sickly gloom that made me question my own sight, my own sanity. Was I being paranoid? Was I seeing patterns where none existed? My student portal, the lifeline to my classes and finances, locked me out one Tuesday morning for repeated suspicious activity. I stared at the login screen, my pulse pounding in my ears as if the university's own system was whispering that I didn't belong. Then, Professor Halsey, a man I respected deeply, called me into his book-lined office. His face was kind but serious. "A formal complaint has come across my desk," he said, steepling his fingers. "Someone alleges you plagiarized sections of your behavioral analysis report." My stomach dropped through the floor. That report had been my masterpiece, built over weeks of late nights, cold coffee, and obsessive revisions. I opened my mouth, a flood of defense ready, but he raised a gentle hand. "I don't believe it for a second. The work is too uniquely yours. I'm telling you so you can be prepared." Prepared for what? A shadow war with an invisible enemy? The whispers now had a texture. They followed me out of his office, down the hall, a constant, rustling hum in my wake. The true turning point, the moment hope died and cold certainty took its place, was an email. It was sent from my university account to my thesis advisor, canceling a critical feedback meeting I had been counting on for my capstone project. The tone was close to mine, but not quite. A little too curt, a little too formal. The signature was slightly off, using a middle initial I never used. It was a forgery, a deliberate, malicious forgery. That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed in the half-light of our studio apartment, scrolling through old digital photos of Maya and me. The forced smiles at family gatherings, the way her arm would sling over my shoulder a little too tightly in pictures. The backhanded compliments, "It's so cute you're trying so hard." The sharp, fleeting smiles that never reached her eyes when I shared good news. The times she'd dismiss my achievements as luck or the professor liking you. The pattern, once invisible, now glared back at me from the glowing screen with brutal clarity. This wasn't random misfortune or petty envy. This was a calculated, sustained campaign. That weekend, I drove home. I found my mom in the backyard, kneeling in the soil, tending to her hydrangeas as if the world wasn't collapsing around me. "Mom?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. "Has Maya ever said anything about my scholarship? About school?" She paused, trowel hovering above the dirt. She didn't look at me. "She's been tense," my mom admitted, focusing intently on a weed. "She says things come easily to you, that you get everything handed to you on a silver platter." She finally glanced up, her eyes full of a pained conflict. I told her that wasn't fair, but her voice trailed off. The butt hung in the air, heavier than any accusation. That was all the external confirmation I needed. The fracture in our family wasn't just my imagination. It was real, and it was being nurtured. I returned to campus that Sunday evening with a new resolve. The time for guessing, for hoping I was wrong, was over. I contacted Leo, a digital forensic specialist recommended by a friend of a friend. He worked out of a shared, noisy workspace downtown, a man of astonishingly few words. He just listened, really listened, as I laid out the entire timeline: the missing money, the fake emails, the locked account, the whispers. When I finished, he simply tapped the edge of his laptop and said, "If someone's been in your digital life, they left footprints. People always do." 3 days later, he called me back. The evidence was waiting on his ultra-sharp monitor, a damning digital map. Logan attempts to my portal from an IP address registered to my parents' home. My scholarship payments, rerouted in small amounts to an external account I'd never seen. The fake complaint emails, sent from a sophisticated server spoofing the university's domain. This, Leo said, pointing at the data, his voice devoid of emotion, is intentional. The word was surgical. It carved through my last vestige of denial. The evidence
Sometimes
was a
the
cold,
person you
hard
share a
knot of
childhood
truth in my
with,
stomach.
the one who knows
Every
all
digital
your secret
footprint led
passwords
back
and
to
your
one
deepest
person
fears,
sitting in that
decides
house.
to weaponize that intimacy.
I drove to my parents' house that evening and sat in my idling car at the curb, watching the warm yellow light of the kitchen window. It looked so peaceful, a diorama of normal family life that felt like a museum exhibit from a past I could no longer access. My dad found me there 20 minutes later, his silhouette framed in the driver's side window. "Sienna, what's going on? Come inside." I rolled down the window, the cool night air hitting my face. "I can't, Dad. Not yet." I gave him a version of the truth, a carefully edited highlight reel. "Someone has been sabotaging me at school. They got into my accounts, messed with my money, tried to get me in academic trouble." His face, lit by the porch light, paled. Who? Who would do that? He looked genuinely bewildered, and that heartbreaking confusion was why I couldn't say her name. The full, unvarnished truth would shatter his image of his firstborn daughter, of our family itself. He still saw Maya as his complicated, passionate girl who'd lost her way, not as someone capable of this meticulous, calculated cruelty. I let him believe it was a faceless, anonymous hacker. Protecting his illusion felt like the last kind thing I could do before the storm hit, but I was done protecting hers. Back in my dorm, I became a strategist. I gathered every file, every screenshot, every time-stamped log Leo had provided into a single, dense digital dossier. I wasn't reacting to her attacks anymore. I was building an unassailable counterattack. The next morning, I met with Elena Reyes, a lawyer who specialized in academic and cyber harassment. Her office was quiet and smelled of old books and fresh coffee. She reviewed the dossier in silence, her eyes scanning rapidly. When she looked up, she asked only one question. "What is your goal here?" I didn't hesitate. "To make sure she can't do this to me ever again, and to make sure she can't do it to anyone else." Elena gave a single, sharp nod. "Then we make it official." For the first time in months, the churning anxiety in my gut was replaced by something else. Direction. A fierce, clear purpose. The 2 weeks leading up to graduation were an exercise in surreal duality. On the surface, I was a normal, exhausted senior, returning library books, sweating through final exams, trying on my cap and gown in front of my mirror. Underneath, I was a general preparing for a public confrontation on a battlefield of her choosing. The night before the ceremony, I barely slept. I laid everything out on my desk like sacred artifacts: the printed dossier, the sworn statement Elena helped me draft, a summary of my capstone project, the work she'd tried to undermine. My hands, which had shaken for months, were perfectly steady. They had the calm of someone who had finally stepped out of survival mode and into resolution. At sunrise, I sealed the physical evidence into a thick, legal-sized blue envelope and placed it solemnly into the inner lining of my graduation gown. It sat against my ribs, a secret shield. The university auditorium was a roaring sea of hope and pride. Students hugged, parents beamed, faculty marched in colorful regalia. It all looked so beautifully, painfully normal. When my family arrived, I spotted them instantly, and the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place with a sickening thud. Maya wasn't dressed for a celebration. She was dressed for a performance. A stark, tailored white blazer and pants, dramatic makeup applied like war paint, her posture rigid and scanning, a hawk looking for the perfect moment to dive. Our parents hugged me tightly. My mom's embrace was frantic. My dad's lingered too long. Their anxiety was a third presence between us. Then Maya stepped forward. "Congratulations," she said, her voice smooth as polished glass. "The big day for the golden child has finally arrived." Her smile was a razor-thin gash across her face, quick and predatory. I met her gaze, kept my voice flat and even. "Indeed, it has." In that brief, electric second, I saw the entire plan reflected in her eyes. She hadn't come to watch me graduate. She had come to destroy it. From my assigned seat on the stage with the other honors students, I had a god's eye view. The ceremony rolled on, speeches, awards, the swell of orchestral music. I watched her, a spot of defiant white in the crowd. My name, alphabetically, was toward the end. She was biding her time, letting the anticipation build, waiting for the perfect, most public moment to strike. And then, the dean finally called it. Sienna Miller. I stood. The heavy velvet of my gown felt like a mantle. I took one step toward the podium, and that's when I heard it, the sharp, violent scrape of her chair being shoved back. Then her voice, not a shout at first, but a clear, piercing declaration that slaughtered the ceremonial atmosphere. Stop the ceremony. She doesn't deserve that diploma. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. All heads turned. She cheated her way through this program. She bought her grades and plagiarized her work. Now she was shouting, pointing directly at me on the stage, her finger a weapon. Ask anyone, she's a fraud. Hundreds of faces swiveled from her to me, their expressions morphing from confused joy to stunned disbelief. Phones lifted into the air, a forest of tiny glowing rectangles capturing the spectacle she had so desperately craved. The silence that followed her outburst was absolute, thick with tension. In that silence, I made a choice. I did not look at her. I did not flinch. I did not scream back. Instead, I continued walking. My heels clicked a slow, deliberate rhythm on the wooden steps as I descended from the stage and into the main aisle. The crowd parted for me, a sea of wide eyes and parted lips. Some looked at me with pity, others with sharp curiosity. A few turned away, as if my humiliation might be contagious. But I felt no humiliation. I felt a crystalline clarity. I walked the long aisle toward the dean, who waited at the podium, his face an unreadable mask of professional calm. When I reached him, the entire auditorium was holding its breath. He handed me my diploma tube, leaned in for the customary handshake, and in that split second, I whispered words only he could hear. The evidence is under seat 12B, the blue envelope. I felt, rather than saw, the slightest tightening of his grip on my hand. His eyes met mine, and he gave one single, almost imperceptible nod. That tiny motion was the detonator. Behind us, security began to move with quiet efficiency. A faculty member approached Maya's row. She was still standing, chest heaving, her perfect makeup beginning to crack under the heat of her performance. "You need to come with us, please," the officer said, his voice low. She didn't understand. "What? No. Did you not hear me? She's the one you should be taking," she barked, her voice wobbling with a new panicked edge. But the room's energy had shifted. The audience had seen my calm procession. They had seen the dean's nod. They were now watching her unravel. A woman in the second row lowered her phone, frowning not at me, but at Maya's escalating desperation. "You're all blind," Maya screamed, the sound raw and ragged. "She's been lying for years." But the crowd was no longer hers. Her performance had crossed the line from shocking accusation into unhinged spectacle. Security gently but firmly guided her out of the row and up the aisle. She turned at the doors, her eyes blazing with a fury born of total failure. "This isn't over, Sienna. You think that little whisper makes you innocent?" I still didn't look back. I didn't need to. The truth was already in motion, a quiet, legal, and irrevocable force. After the subdued conclusion of the ceremony, the dean met me backstage. He held the unopened blue envelope. "This is profoundly serious," he said, his voice grave. "So was what she did," I replied, my own voice steady. Elena, my lawyer, was already there, a pillar of crisp professionalism. The academic board moved with startling speed. Leo's digital report was the skeleton key. It made sense of every strange event. The login logs, the rerouted funds, the spoofed emails, they formed an undeniable map of sustained sabotage. 2 professors independently came forward with odd emails they'd received about me, which they now re-examined. The scholarship office traced the financial discrepancies directly to actions taken from my parents' home network. Within a week, Maya was issued a formal ban from all university property pending a full disciplinary review. Her outburst at graduation, the very spectacle she thought would be her winning blow, was cited as clear evidence of malicious intent and emotional instability. Elena filed for civil restitution. The evidence was so overwhelming that a settlement was reached in a matter of days. My parents existed in a state of shock for weeks, cycling through denial, anger, and a devastating quiet grief. The evidence left no room for their old narrative. They had to rebuild their understanding of both their daughters from the ground up, and that fracture, I know, may never fully heal. I moved to a new city that summer, a place with no memories attached to my name. I found a small, sun-drenched apartment on the top floor of an old brick building. I bought a cheap, sturdy desk and a single, impossible-to-kill pothos plant. In the mornings, light would pour through the east-facing windows, and for the first time in years, I could simply sit and breathe without waiting for the next blow to fall. The lesson I carried from that auditorium wasn't about victory or revenge. It was about sovereignty. Her choices created the hurricane, but I alone decided how to build my shelter after it passed. I reclaimed the narrative she tried to steal, sentence by sentence, by choosing proof over panic, strategy over screaming, and quiet truth over loud lies. If you've ever had to stand up to someone who was supposed to be your shelter, a family member, a close friend, a partner, you know that particular loneliness, the ache of betrayal that lives in your bones. You question your own memories, your own worth. You are not alone in that feeling, not even close. So I want you to do two things for me right now. First, take a breath. Wherever you are, just pause and breathe. You have survived every single thing that has ever been weaponized against you. That is your proof of strength. Now, I want you to type just one word into the comments below. It can be solidarity. It can be understood. It can be healing. Or it can be your own word. That small act, seeing your word alongside others, is a powerful reminder that your story is part of a larger tapestry of resilience. This channel, Wines of Thought, is dedicated to exploring these difficult truths and the quiet strength it takes to navigate them. If this story resonated with you, if you want more content that digs deep into the psychology of relationships, overcoming covert manipulation, and rebuilding a life on your own terms, then please hit the like button on this video right now. That like tells the algorithm that these conversations matter. And finally, tap subscribe and turn on notifications for Wines of Thought. By subscribing, you're not just watching a video, you're joining a community that believes in facing the hard things, and you'll be the first to know when we release our next deep dive story. Your support is what allows me to keep telling these truths. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being here.